Okay, so defining a sports fan. For me, this was actually really hard to do because, well, I gave it a pretty general definition. I said an individual who's committed to supporting their team. I think a real fan is somebody that like supports their team through thick and thin. However, I think there can be different degrees of fandom. So there can be those people that have season tickets and go to every game, and there can be those fans that just watch a game on TV every once in a while, but that is their favorite team. So I think there can be different degrees to that. Examples of good fan bases and bad fan bases, and why they are good and bad. I decided to use examples from what I know and what I'm aware of rather than just looking them up. So a good fan base that I'm aware of, and granted there could probably be some negative instances with this team, but this is just what I know, and that is the Detroit Tigers. I am from Michigan. I have gone to Detroit Tigers games. I consider myself somewhat of a fan. I'm not a huge baseball person, but obviously if I was, I would definitely support Detroit. But I find them to be a really good fan base because although they don't have the best record, they don't win a lot of games, haven't gone to the World Series in a long time, but you still see people consistently showing up to their games. I always see the stands pretty full. I think every single game they have, I know somebody there because I'll like see it on social media. So I feel like it has a pretty consistent fan base of supporting it, whether it's losing or winning. And in addition to that, I never see any negative things coming out of a Detroit Tigers fan's mouth about the team. So the fan is always highlighting on, you know, what the team did good on that game, or like what player has kind of like risen to the occasion. They really try to focus on the positives of their team rather than like dragging everybody else down because, well, I think that's because they know what it feels like to be on the bottom, and so they're not a super negative team that wants to, or they're not a super negative fan base that kind of wants to drag down others with them because they understand what it's like to be on the bottom. So a bad fan base, this is actually kind of a personal experience one. So if you're from Michigan or if you're from Ohio, you know that University of Michigan and Ohio State are big rivals. And Michigan and Michigan State are rivals as well. Well, this last year, my brother, who's a diehard U of M fan, went to the Michigan State versus Ohio State football game. He won free tickets to it, and so he decided to take him and a couple of his Michigan State friends. My brother's one of those people that like he's not gonna wear something different or not wear his favorite hat because it says University of Michigan on it. He's gonna wear it. It's not like he, anyways. Um, so he went to the game because his friends are Michigan State fans. They kind of sat close to the student section. When he was there, people stayed within like a five. They would not come within a 5 foot radius of him. Like they acted like they were disgusted with him. They were booing him for like 10 minutes when he got there. They were staring at him. A bunch of people were taking pictures. And actually, one of those pictures found itself onto a Ohio State fan page, and it was like Facebook, Twitter, and it kind of blew up and went viral. And it was kind of just a nasty comment about like how like stupid and ridiculous he was, and like why the like bleep would he do that? Like why would he go to that game and wear that hat? And in the comments, a lot of people started to get really nasty. So they started talking about like his weight and like the way he looked, and like what his life is probably like, and getting threats and stuff like that. And so I think that's a good example of a bad fan base, just because like it was no longer about the teams. It was about like them attacking somebody for literally the choice of what he wore. He wasn't booing the Ohio State or Michigan State. He was just trying to watch the game. So I think that's an example of a bad fan base. So what type of behaviors are crossing the line? I think for me this is pretty obvious. So violence, I think, is crossing the line. Harassment, as we saw like with Malice in the Palace, like throwing things at people, stuff like that. I said language. I think this, some people might think this is like ridiculous and that, like, you know, you're free to say whatever you want, but I think in certain situations it comes off like it's too much. So for high school events, no parent should be cursing at players. They shouldn't be cursing at refs. Like, that's not their place. And so I think that's crossing the line. And even at like professional events, there's a family sitting next to you. You should not be cursing and saying words when there's like 4-year-olds next to you. So I think that's like crossing the line a bit. And then destruction of property. I saw a few instances online of like when teams are over celebrating, or even when they lost and they're like taking it out on something, like breaking windows and like graffiti and stuff like that. So our wild fan behavior versus hooliganism culture. So for me, this was more so, I saw it as hooliganism as a lifestyle. I feel like with football in the England, you kind of grow up believe like and you grow up, and when you grow up you're like a part of this one team. You support that one team. You do not go back on that support. It's a lifestyle. Um and it's kind of like a family thing, whereas in the United States I feel like we're more open. Like, when you're younger, you're not pressured to like a certain team by your parents. It's more so you can, you know, support whoever you want to support, all that stuff. So I feel like that's why our wild fan behavior is very, you know, we can pinpoint certain situations where it was bad, such as Malice in the Palace. Whereas hooliganism, it happens too often because it's their lifestyle, and so like they act out because it feels like someone's violating their family or something. And then are the hooligans fans? I I don't know if I'd consider, I guess you could call them fans, but I also consider them, it's almost like cultish to me. Um, so, I mean, I guess you can consider them extreme fans, but I think that they're fans kind of in a negative way because of all the violence and the destruction and everything. So I think you can maybe consider them fans, just a bad fan base. And then why don't we see this behavior in the US? I feel like our events are a little more controlled, and I also feel like in the US, you know, we're not afraid to be like, this event is over if something breaks out. Where I feel as, because in England, like, soccer or football is a lifestyle, like that game's gonna happen no matter what. And so I feel like they kind of test the limits with that. Whereas like we know like this game can get shut down if something bad happens. And so I feel like, I guess you could say, our government or like the sport associations have a better handle on that in the US.